My name is Sage Whitmore. I was the one who planned that party, chose every candle, every song, every toast, myself, and yet I hadn't prepared for a single sentence. Daddy, can we dance like we did last night? That voice came from a 3-year-old girl, the daughter of my best friend, right in the middle of what was supposed to be my and Evan's 10-year wedding anniversary. My husband, the man who had stood in front of dozens of people and called me his one and only, froze, and me, I couldn't breathe. Have you ever been betrayed in front of everyone you once trusted? Leave a comment if you've ever felt the world turn its back while you were still smiling. And if you think this story deserves to be heard, like, subscribe, and follow me into what comes next. Because that was only the beginning. I still remember the day Lena moved in with us. It was early February, snow still clinging to the ground. She stood at our front door with a worn-out suitcase, Maddie asleep on her shoulder. Evan answered. He looked at her, then turned to me with a questioning glance. I didn't overthink it. Lena had been my best friend since college, the one who helped me through losing my mom. When she called in tears saying her boyfriend had walked out on her while she was 7 months pregnant, I nearly jumped out of bed. I don't know where to go, Sage. I need a few weeks to figure things out, she said over the phone, her voice cracking. I had turned to Evan. Can Lena stay with us, just until she finds a place to rent? He nodded without hesitation. Of course, just a few weeks, right? A few weeks turned into a few months. Then 3 years. 3 years of dinners as a group of 3, weekend trips with Maddie, and hearing that little girl call me Auntie Sage in that sweet, sticky voice. I never thought to question it. Lena was the friend I'd held hands with through the chaos of our 20s. She'd crashed on my couch every time her heart broke. We'd written wedding plans for each other back when neither of us had anyone to love, and Evan was always the devoted husband. He'd rub my back on sleepless nights and whisper, "We'll have a baby one day. It's just not the right time yet." We'd both wanted children. It wasn't my dream. Evan would press his ear to my belly whenever I was late, grinning like a little boy. Maybe this time it's real. But that time wasn't. 2 years ago, I miscarried before I even reached 8 weeks. No blood, no screaming. Just a sharp pain in the night and then a cold, clinical sentence in the ultrasound room. There's no heartbeat. I didn't speak for 3 days. Evan sat beside me in the hospital, holding my hand through the first night. Maybe. You were right. The baby just picked the wrong time. Lena always tried to be respectful. She worked at a small nonprofit, didn't earn much, but did her best to stay independent. I'd seen her doing laundry at midnight. I once offered her money for rent, but she insisted on giving it all back. "I owe you my whole life, Sage," she told me once. And I believed her. When Maddie had a fever, I was the one who ran out to get medicine. When Lena worked late, I was the one who bathed Maddie and read her bedtime stories. Every birthday, I ordered an Elsa cake. Because Maddie loved Frozen. I got teary the first time she called me Mommy Sage, then quickly corrected herself and covered her face in embarrassment. I laughed. "That's okay. Call me whatever you want. I love you." Evan was in the kitchen then, watching us with a soft expression. I remember turning to him and whispering, "I think maybe we'll be a real family someday." He stepped closer, placed a hand on my shoulder. "We already are, Sage." I didn't know that while I journaled baby name ideas, Evan was secretly picking Maddie up from daycare and reading her to sleep in our living room during Lena's so-called meetings. I didn't know that while I stood in a hospital hallway with an IV drip in my arm after a miscarriage, Evan had texted Lena, "She's okay, no suspicion." Now the pieces were falling into place. And I couldn't stop the memories, each one hitting like a late mucking news alert with a cruel punchline. I had opened my heart. I gave them everything. They had to speak. But instead of truth, they chose silence. And that silence turned out to be the cruelest lie of all. I don't remember how I left the party table. All I know is my limbs were ice cold. A dried smear of champagne and blood clung between my fingers, and Maddie's daddy still echoed in my head like a scratch I couldn't stop picking at. Guests began to leave in hushed clusters. No one asked anything. No one touched me. Some glanced, some looked away. Lena disappeared behind Evan carrying Maddie upstairs. Evan stayed there, one hand in his pocket, the other tangled in his hair. He looked at me like he had something to say, but couldn't. I turned and walked into the sitting room. A few moments later, he followed. Didn't knock. You heard it, didn't you? His voice was hoarse, like his throat had been scraped raw. I looked up, heard what? It's Daddy, come dance with me like last night, or the way you froze like a criminal caught in the act. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I gave a cold laugh. How was it supposed to go? Was she gonna say happy 10th anniversary, Mom and Dad, surprise? Evan lowered his head, fingers laced together. I'm sorry, Sage, I don't know where to begin. I crossed my arms, leaning into the chair. How about the first time you slept with your wife's best friend? He looked up, pain etched across his face. It was a mistake, a one-time thing. I thought it was weakness. Lena was hurting. You were away for work. I felt like a failure because you couldn't get pregnant. You think I was the reason you cheated? My voice was low, more dangerous than if I'd screamed. Instead of answering, he exhaled. She got pregnant, he said, and I didn't know what to do. Lena didn't want to terminate. You were still grieving the miscarriage. I didn't have the courage to tell you. So you let me believe I was the only one trying to build a family, while you already had one, living under my roof. Evan reached out, but I pulled back as if he were handing me a blade. But I chose you, he said quickly. I chose to stay with you, to keep this marriage. Lena knew. We'd agreed long ago. I didn't think it would explode like this. Right then my phone buzzed. A message from Lena. I didn't think it would blow up like this. You two sure love calling this blowing up, don't you? You're not going to forgive me, are you? He asked softly, almost a whisper. I got up and headed for the bedroom. Not to rest, to leave. I opened the closet, pulled the small suitcase from beneath the bed. A few clothes. My wallet, phone, car keys. Evan walked in behind me. Where are you going? Away from here. Away from a house where every wall holds a lie. You can't leave like this. I can. And I will. I turned around, my gaze ice cold. Because if I don't, I'll destroy everything. He blocked the door, hands trembling. Sage, please. Don't turn this into a war. I looked at him for a long time. The man I once loved, once trusted, once dreamed of having children with, was now a shattered shadow, standing in the ruins he built himself. I stepped past him, opened the door, and didn't look back. I drove into the night, no radio, no destination. The cold wind whipped across my face, but at least it was real. I stopped in front of a house with a warm yellow porch light still on. Claire's house. I knocked. Claire opened the door, still in her bathrobe, hair tousled, eyes sleepy, until they widened when she saw me. Sage, what happened to you? I was shapeless, voiceless, nowhere to return to. She didn't ask anything else. She pulled me into a hug. Come in, you're safe here. Claire made me a cup of hot chamomile tea and set it on the table before sitting beside me. Her kitchen still had that pale yellow paint from when our parents were alive, quiet and warm like a memory untouched. A while later, Claire spoke. I always thought Maddie looked a little like Evan. I stared into the thin steam rising from my cup, heart sinking like old tea leaves. The first time I met her, there was something familiar in her eyes, Claire continued. I asked Evan directly. He swore she was Lena's daughter. Said Maddie was born after a fling Lena had in Arizona. I slowly turned toward her. And you believed him? Not completely. But I didn't want to hurt you. You loved Evan. You trusted your friends. I didn't want to plant doubt while you still called them family. I understood, too well, the feeling of clinging to belief like a child clutching a pillow during a bad dream. That night after Claire went to bed, I sat alone in her living room, opened my laptop, opened everything I once believed was private, normal. I started with the home security system. Evan liked control. He'd installed cameras by the gate and driveway years ago. He also had a habit of saving every receipt, every confirmation email, every report, I used to think it was cautiously cute. I logged into the shared cloud system. The password was still our wedding date. Still unchanged. I scrolled back to last October. The night Lena went on a cabin retreat with coworkers. Evan left the house at 10 p.m. His car turned right, not toward the highway like he claimed. And the next morning that same car picked up Lena and Maddie at the end of the block and brought them back to my house. I switched to Evan's synced work calendar. He'd marked that day as site inspection out of town. But the GPS showed the address of a lakeside hotel in Aspen, a place I'd once said I wanted to visit. Evan had told me it was off-season. Then I opened the credit card statements. One night at a resort in Aspen, $850. 2 spa appointments in the morning. That same week, a receipt from Target for baby supplies. Lena said she was shopping for a friend about to give birth. I clicked through every file, every folder, every month. No more tears, only cold digital proof. Each entry a needle to my memory. 3 years. Evan hadn't just cheated. He had built a parallel life, playing father, partner, steady man. And I was the only one who didn't see it. I moved on to the bank transfers. I'd never looked too closely. Evan handled the family finances. I trusted him so much that when Lena was admitted to deliver Maddie, I was the one who paid the hospital deposit Evan said was helping out a coworker. I even asked, should we send flowers? And Lena had texted, don't worry about it, they're grateful. That invoice still existed. March 12th, 3 years ago. $3,200. Note: St. Mary's Medical Center, Maternity Unit. Payer: Sage Whitmore. I laughed. I paid for my best friend to deliver her child with my husband. I bought newborn clothes, thinking it was kindness. I cradled Maddie on nights Lena was too tired, while Evan watched from the doorway and called it the most beautiful picture in this house. And then I remembered a small detail I once dismissed. Maddie's bracelet. A little charm engraved with MEY. I'd asked Lena, she said. Her dad's name is Matthew Elliott Warren. Now I could only see one truth in those 3 initials. Maddie Evan Whitmore. 3 letters. One polished lie, a family tree hidden beneath smiles and fresh flowers. I sat curled on the wooden chair beside Claire's living room window. Morning light filtered through sheer curtains, lighting up a world I no longer recognized. Outside, a street sweeper hummed in the distance. Inside me, facts collided like shattered glass in what used to be a home. Claire brought me a second cup of coffee, said nothing, let me sit there in silence. It was the best thing anyone could offer when your heart becomes a battlefield. I set the mug down and opened my phone. My finger hovered, then stopped at a familiar name, Miles Garner. An old friend from college, now working in internal audit at the bank where Evan held his personal accounts. We didn't talk often but stayed in touch on LinkedIn and sent birthday messages now and then. I typed a simple message. Miles, I need to see you, urgently. It's about Evan's personal finances. Can you help me? He's seen it within seconds. Meet me at Cafe Craven at 2 o'clock. I'll bring what you need. Claire listened as I read the exchange aloud, then nodded. You're smart. Men like Evan can hide emotions, but the books always tell the truth. Miles was already waiting at our old cafe spot. Still tall and lean, white shirt, dark tie. Eyes a mix of concern and curiosity. I won't ask much, he said as I sat down, but based on what you messaged, I'm guessing Evan isn't quite the man you thought he was. He's 2 different people, and I need to know how both of them spend their money. Miles pulled out a light gray folder and set it in front of me. Statements from a secondary account registered under W Project. It doesn't show up in your joint financial profile, but it's linked through a side account that receives monthly transfers from Evan's main one. I opened the first page. Cold black ink danced before my eyes. Sunshine Day Care. Tiny Toes Pediatric Clinic, Target. Old Navy Kids, Starbucks, Capitol Avenue. Every transaction regular, predictable, directly from Evan's card. The W Project account had existed for nearly 3 years, spending nearly $4,000 a month. Miles slipped another page for me. This is a cash flow chart. See? At the start of each month, a near X amount moves from one of Evan's business accounts, the one he listed as project bonus expenses. But that money never showed up in the company payroll. I bit my lip. So, he used the company account to fund a separate personal account? Exactly. Every detail I read felt like a small, steady cut, deeper than I imagined. And all of these documents are verified by the bank? Admissible in court if needed, Miles said calmly, like he'd said that line too many times before. All it takes is a lawyer's order. I thanked him with a quiet look of gratitude. He didn't ask what I planned to do next, he simply said, "If you need anything else, call me." That evening I returned to Claire's house, still gripping the folder like someone clutching a map to freedom. Claire skimmed a few pages, then looked up. Her eyes held no hesitation now, only clarity. "You've got what courts value more than tears, evidence. I don't want a divorce. I want everything back. Everything I built with Evan." Claire placed a hand on my shoulder. "Then you'll need to prove he committed financial fraud during the marriage, especially if he used joint funds or business money to support a third party." The anger inside me hadn't settled, but instead of exploding, it had sharpened, clear and deliberate. "Do you know a good lawyer?" I asked. Claire didn't even blink. "Mildred Bennett, a bit tough, but excellent with asset division and protecting women in divorce, especially when there's financial fraud involved." I picked up my phone and started looking up her law office. I sat in front of my computer, barely blinking, the blue light casting a hard glow on my face. My hands rested still on the keyboard. The file from Miles was scanned and saved in a folder labeled Dub Project, Confidential. I opened the anonymous email account Claire helped me set up using a private VPN. The recipient was rbenton@bentonpartners.com. Richard Benton, Evan's biggest investment partner in the Whitmore Greenway luxury housing project. Subject line: Financial alert. Personal budget misuse in Lakeview investment project. Dear Mr. Benton, I am an internal source with direct involvement in the Whitmore Greenway project. Attached is documentation proving that Mr. Evan Whitmore has been using project funds for personal expenses, specifically fixed payments benefiting an external party outside the approved financial structure. These transactions appear under the label project and are disguised as project staff bonuses. This may constitute a serious SEC violation involving investment asset misuse and could affect both the legal and reputational standing of Benton Partners if not addressed promptly. I do not request a response. I simply believe you should be informed. I attached the full account statements from the bank, along with the summary prepared by Miles, simple, concise, and undeniable. This wasn't the move of a betrayed wife. It was the execution of someone who used to run a large-scale event company, someone who knew how to build a stage. And this time, it was for the truth. 3 days later, I got a call from Mildred Bennett. Her voice was hoarse, firm, edged with a sharpness that made me sit up straight. "Did you send the documents?" she asked. "All of them, the wall project file and the company link spending." "Good. I've already filed a motion for marital asset examination and requested an independent audit of unexplained expenditures." I heard papers flipping through the phone. "I've also forwarded copies to the IRS. They may reach out in a few weeks." "Do you think they'll take action?" I asked. "With this file?" "Yes, especially since Evan claimed tax deductions for child support that wasn't legally documented. If Maddie is an illegitimate child and he failed to declare that, he's broken both tax and marital financial law." I knew then my pain was about to be acknowledged by the law, in the only language it couldn't ignore: numbers. That day I also filed a formal request for conditional equitable distribution, a move Mildred described as strategic. "If you can prove financial fraud, your share won't just be half," she told me. Claire read through the printed documents, then placed her hand on my shoulder. "You know this isn't just about getting the money." "No," I whispered. "It's about reclaiming the truth." That weekend, Claire left to run errands, and I stayed home. I brewed a glass of iced tea, sat on the balcony, and checked the anonymous inbox again. One new email. Not from Benton. From a different address. compliance@bentonpartners.com. Subject: Internal review underway. Your information will be kept strictly confidential. The body contained a single line. "Thank you for your courage. We are currently reviewing the full accounting records of the Whitmore Greenway project." And I knew the opening act was over. It was time for the main performance, on a stage where for the first time I held the spotlight, no longer the background to anyone else. I planned the gathering for a Saturday night, exactly 3 weeks after that anniversary evening. The night I first heard Maddie call my husband Daddy. I wore a simple black dress, my hair in a high bun, lips painted in a dark tone. My face no longer needed hiding. I wasn't afraid of being seen anymore. The guest list was intentional. Old college friends, a few former colleagues of mine and Evan's, neighbors who once thought we were the perfect couple. The invitation was short. "I'm starting a new chapter and would like to share something important with those who were once part of the old one. A quiet evening, good food, and a few truths placed where they belong." Mr. Richard Benton was someone I invited personally through a private email. He didn't reply immediately, but 2 days later his assistant confirmed his attendance along with a note. "Mr. Benton appreciates the invitation." That evening, the small house Claire had lent me was arranged like a cozy gallery. Warm lighting, sofas in a circle facing a large TV screen on the wall. I set out grape tarts and glasses of red wine tailored to each guest's preference. By 8 o'clock, nearly everyone had arrived. They were polite, gracious, but the curiosity in their eyes was unmistakable. Jennifer, the bridesmaid from my wedding, was the first to speak. "You said you had something important to share. What is it, Sage?" "Thank you for coming. Tonight isn't about blame, it's about light. Because when a lie is buried too long, it becomes the foundation for a life no one deserves to live inside." I clicked play. The screen lit up. The video I'd edited began. No music, no effects. Just a sequence of cold, clear images. Each one heavy enough to collapse denial. A message from Evan to Lena. "Don't let her call me Daddy in front of Sage." The WPY account statements showing monthly spending on daycare, children's clothes, vacations. A scanned copy of the hospital invoice I paid when Lena gave birth to Maddie, clearly labeled Maternity Unit, St. Mary's. And finally, Maddie's birth certificate. Listed father, Evan Jonathan Whitmore. The room fell silent. Someone dropped a wine glass. It shattered on the floor like the illusion of the model family. Jennifer covered her mouth. Marcus, Evan's closest friend, sat upright. "I didn't know," he whispered, his eyes stunned. No one had to know, because they were that good at hiding it. In this very house, while I was still dreaming of becoming a mother, I was mothering their child. In every way that mattered. The door creaked open. Breathless, with no makeup and swollen eyes, Lena hovered at the doorway. Then she walked in, hands trembling. "Sage, don't. Please don't do this." Everyone turned to look at her. "I know you're angry, but Maddie..." "This isn't about Maddie," I cut in. "This is about the truth. About how the two of you built a life out of lies and left me to clean its face every single day." Lena stepped into the center of the room, standing between me and the screen. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," her voice cracked. "I no longer care about your intentions," I replied, "only the consequences." At that moment, Mr. Benton stood up from the back row. People moved aside. He walked toward me with calm authority and nodded once, like a period at the end of a long sentence. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said clearly. "On behalf of Benton Partners, thank you for bringing forward critical information. We've already initiated an internal investigation, and I want to make it clear. Our company does not tolerate fraud, no matter who it involves." Lena turned to look at him, her face draining of color. "We'll handle the matter according to protocol," he continued, "including a full review of all active contracts." There was nothing left for me to say. The truth had spoken for itself. I thought I would feel relieved once everything was out in the open, laid bare in front of people who once saw me as the pitiful, naive wife, or worse, the woman who couldn't keep her husband. But that feeling didn't come. What followed was emptiness, like a house after all the guests had left, lights dimmed, wine gone, only dirty glasses, and a silence so thick it could slice you open. I cleaned up the mess like I was sorting through memories. The next morning, Evan stood at Claire's front door. I had no idea where he found the nerve to come. His eyes were red, hair disheveled, shirt wrinkled. He looked like someone whose world had collapsed and didn't know how to function in the ruins. Claire stepped out first. She didn't ask me anything, she simply glanced at me and said, "I'll be in the backyard." Evan came in. The small house seemed to shrink the moment he stepped inside. "I want to talk," he began, voice hoarse. "One last time." I took the chair across from him, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I've lost everything, Sage," Evan continued, choking on his words. "Benton terminated our contract. The board voted to remove me from leadership. The IRS has started sending audit letters. And now, I have nothing. Except you. I'm the last thing you thought you could still hold on to, aren't I?" He lowered his head. "I know I was wrong. I know what I did can't be undone. But you're the only person who ever made me feel like I had a place to start again." I leaned back in the chair. "You have a daughter. A beautiful child you've hidden, like she was a mistake. A woman who used to be your wife's best friend. Someone you chose to sleep with under the roof we shared, and now you think I am your fresh start?" "You're still my wife," he said, the words sounding pathetically out of place. "No. I was your wife. But not anymore," I replied. "Not because the court said so, but because I stepped out of that role a long time ago." A few moments later, Lena arrived. She stood at the doorway. Maddie wasn't with her. Her eyes looked exhausted, like she'd cried through the night. "I'm not here to beg," she said. "I want to say something. One last time. And say it. Maddie needs both her parents. No matter how things end between the three of us, she doesn't deserve to be caught in adult punishment." "And you think I'm punishing Maddie?" Lena hesitated. "I don't want her growing up in a world where the two people who once loved her both end up with nothing." I shook my head gently. "I used to think I wanted a child, Lena. Truly. I used to stand for hours in the living room imagining Maddie was mine. I hoped she would call me Mom without correcting herself. But then I realized, what I need isn't to mother a child born from lies. I can't teach a child about honesty when I'm the one who ignored betrayal." Lena broke down in tears. Evan stood motionless, arms limp at his sides. I walked to the window. Sunlight poured through the curtains, lighting the wooden windowsill where I once placed a silver-framed wedding photo. I don't resent Maddie. She's the only one in all of this who's innocent. But I won't stay in a story where every memory was rewritten behind my back by the man I used to call husband. I walked to the door. This time, I opened it myself and left them standing there, among the ruins they built, in the kind of love they called a mistake, but had crafted with meticulous care. "Good luck to you both, especially to Maddie. I hope she grows strong enough to know that not everyone who enters your life deserves to stay." I moved to Portland in early spring. The city had the quiet I needed, with misty mornings and coffee shops small enough that no one asked what you were running from. I rented a top-floor apartment overlooking the Willamette River, not big, not fancy, but it caught sunlight each morning and gave me the silence I needed to begin again, for the first time, for myself. I named my company Second Light Events, a soft kind of irony because most of my first clients were women who had just come through something. Some were navigating life after divorce, others were grieving, and there were those who had left behind relationships of nearly 2 decades, unsure where to even begin. I didn't write a slogan. I placed one line under the company name on the website. It doesn't have to be perfect, just honest enough to begin again. My first client was Rachel Kim, a 41-year-old high school teacher who had just divorced her younger husband after an 11-month court battle. She wanted to throw a party to marry herself again. "I don't need balloons or cake," Rachel said, as she sat in my tiny office that still smelled like fresh paint. "I just want to stand in front of a mirror and know I didn't die from that heartbreak." We built the event together, a warm evening, soft golden lights, live acoustic music, and a speech Rachel would read in her own steady voice, even if her heart still trembled inside. After the party, Rachel hugged me for a long time and whispered, "Thank you. Because of you, I got my life and my dignity back." I came home that night, turned on the kitchen light and cried, but for the first time I cried because I felt my life meant something. My story began to spread quietly, like kitchen smoke curling through narrow window panes. One client led to another. One afternoon, as I was drafting a proposal, I received an email from a stranger. "I'm a friend of Rachel's sister. I once saw you speak at TEDx. I need someone who understands that not everyone can forgive. And that's okay." The TEDx talk came unexpectedly. A friend from Denver forwarded an open call. "They're looking for speakers on recovering from betrayal. If anyone fits, it's you." I submitted the talk without much hope. 3 weeks later, they called. A month after that, I stood under bright lights, facing hundreds of silent people. I began with one simple line. Some people will tell you forgiveness is the highest form of maturity, but no one warns you. Some betrayals don't need forgiveness, only survival. I ended the talk with this. I don't hate them, but I don't keep them either, and I'm still here, strong enough to build a life that doesn't wait for an apology. After the event, a middle-aged woman approached me, eyes still wet. "You said what I've never dared to name. Turns out I don't need to forgive to be a good person." I smiled. Not a good person, an honest one. My company grew quietly, steadily. No flash, no headlines. We planned rebirth parties, second birthdays, divorce finalization celebrations, and peaceful goodbye events between people who once loved each other but chose to leave at the right time. Every card, every bouquet, every string of lights. No longer for others' approval, but to mark a shift. A quiet beginning. A reclaiming. No one taught me how to do this. But it turns out pain can be a language if you learn how to listen through what you've lost. That afternoon, when I returned to the office after a client meeting in the Pearl District, a large bouquet was already resting on the receptionist's desk. White tulips mixed with soft purple lavender wrapped in plain tissue paper. No sender listed. A small card, slanted handwriting I didn't recognize. "Thank you for not forgiving the one who was wrong, but for forgiving yourself." I held the card in my hand, frozen midair, as if someone had seen through me, at a depth I didn't think I still allowed anyone to reach. I walked into my office, set the bouquet on the sofa, pulled out my notebook from the drawer, and flipped to the first blank page. I began to write. "Dear Sage, at 30 years old, right now, you're probably sitting on the bathroom floor, clutching a negative pregnancy test for the 4th time, thinking something must be wrong with you. You might be blaming yourself, wondering why Evan, the man you believed would be your forever, is growing distant, and why Lena suddenly seems too familiar inside your own home. They'll tell you to be softer, to forgive, be generous, hold things together. But you don't need to keep anything that has become a burden." I paused, eyes drifting to the window. The trees along the street had just started budding. Spring in Portland always arrived a little late, as if the city itself had once been hurt and was still learning how to trust the light again. I kept writing. "There will come a moment when you think, maybe if you'd forgiven, you could have kept everything. The marriage, the friendships, the polished image people had of you. But then you'll understand. Silence to preserve peace never heals betrayal. And walking through pain without making excuses for the one who caused it. That's how you open a door for yourself. You'll live without needing anyone else's faith in you to define your worth. You'll help other women rise not by preaching that forgiveness is noble, but by saying the most honest thing. I understand. I've been there too." I set the pen down, leaned back in my chair. Yesterday, a new client asked me in our first meeting, "Have you ever been married?" I smiled and looked her straight in the eyes. "I have. But that doesn't define me. I didn't mention Evan. I didn't mention Lena. No stories about the house, the loss, the legal battle. They were once part of my story, but they're no longer the headline. There were names I once carved in love, once spoke with a trembling voice, once printed on invitations and wrote into every plan for the future. But in the end, they fade. Like the stage lights dimming behind the backdrop when the lead steps into the spotlight. What do you think about the choice I made? That I didn't forgive, didn't cling, didn't lash out in anger. I simply walked out of the old story and began writing the next chapter. My way. If you've ever been in a moment where you had to choose between holding on to a relationship or holding on to yourself, what did you choose? Share your thoughts in the comments. Maybe your story will be the light for someone else still stumbling in the dark. And if you care about the quiet layers of family life, the loss, the pain, but also the path to rise again and begin anew, follow the channel so you don't miss the next stories to come.